Hi, everyone. This is Brianna McIntyre hosting another podcast without Michael. We're excited that you're here. And today I get the pleasure of interviewing another dear friend of mine, Heather. I'm going to do a little intro of her first. Heather is an entrepreneur, a bookkeeper who helps small businesses bring clarity, order, and confidence to their finances. Her journey also includes completing a discipleship program with Youth with a Mission, or YWAM, in Budapest, which led to missions work across Eastern Europe and nearly 2 years living and serving in Hungary. She's been an intercessor in a local church for over 12 years and has taught on prayer both in the U.S. and overseas. And just to give you a glimpse of who she is, she's almost always holding a drink. Today it's a Red Bull. Her fridge looks like a vending machine. She loves languages and is a proud owner of an adorable Holland Lop bunny. Welcome, Heather. We're so glad you're here today.
Yay. I am so excited to be here. Thank you so much for allowing me, for asking me. I'm pretty sure this will just be more like a FaceTime between you and I. So
absolutely
natural.
Yes. And so, like I said, Heather is a dear friend. So there are so many things that we are going to cover in this episode that we have had conversations about over, I think, the 4 or 5 years of friendship that we have had.
Mm-hmm.
Just for some context, I met Heather. She came through NLE, and then later on, I went and watched her speak at a women's event, and she was talking about prayer. And I had not encountered the Holy Spirit in a few years at that point. I had a relationship with the Holy Spirit. Maybe I should say I had not encountered the presence of God the way I did in a few years. And it was like, I felt like I finally got to drink water after being in a desert for a long time. And so I was like, okay, I need to know her. Because whatever she unpacked in that room impacted me greatly. And it was a paradigm shift for me in learning about prayer and how to receive from the Lord. And so she's going to share a little bit about that today. I want to start off with for you is the beginning of your journey with the Lord. So if you can share that, that would be amazing.
Sure. It started on dark and stormy Tuesday night when I was born. Just kidding. So I actually pretty much grew up in the church. Not for the first couple of years of my life, but mostly. And that was actually due to, in part, my grandparents, especially my grandfather. But when I was a few years old, my mom started going to church and made it an important part of our lives. And I loved it. I mean, I didn't really have a problem, going to church every week, So, and the interesting thing too for me is that I've never questioned God's existence. Mm-hmm. It's just never been one of the things that I'm like, oh, is God real or is he not? Like, I think I knew as a child. I had heard God speak to me different things. Like one of the ones, one time I was playing outside by myself and I heard this internal voice say, I want to learn German. And I thought to myself, I'm like 6 years old, maybe 7. And I was like, that's a weird thought for me to have.
Yeah.
And I concluded, oh, that must be God. And so even from a young age, I just knew. And I had some really interesting experiences as well that made it, the only way to explain it would be supernatural. And so for me, it's just, I'm thankful for that, but it definitely added to the journey for me, knowing that Jesus is the way of life. He's the way, the truth, the life, and that really the point of life is relationship with him. It's so I knew that as a young child, an adolescent growing up. So I grew up in the church. So I knew that that's like the goal, is knowing Jesus. But I dealt with some emotional problems, especially like depression was one of them. And I didn't know how to overcome it. So depression, anger, I just didn't know how to deal with that. And it kind of culminated when I was 13, 14 years old. And I had tried everything to really change myself. And I realized.
Like what?
Behavior management.
Okay. Yeah.
Don't be angry,
Yeah.
But, I was 10, 11, 12 years old. There's not like a lot of resources or skills that I had at the time or people to really learn that from. And so I just tried to change my emotions without changing anything, which is
not good.
Yeah, it's like trying to grab the inside of an avocado seed or whatever. And it's like you can't ever grab it because it always slips out of your hand. But it's so elusive. Anyway, so I had a hard time. And what that did for me is it started to instill a lie and an ungodly belief that I can't love God. And I know that's the only way to life, and yet I can't have it. And so it kind of made me a spiral and as a young person. And I remember being in youth group at the time. It's not like I questioned God's existence. It's like I really wanted to love him, and I just felt like I couldn't. Like I didn't have it in me because I was back and forth. I was on this Christian hype with like youth groups and different things. And I come home and I'd be like angry. And that could be funny stories later. But I just struggled with that, emotionally. And I had a chance when I was in youth group to go on a mission trip. And I was at the end of my rope and I was just like, okay, God, I can't do anything to change how I feel. And I finally did for the first time, I finally did what I had never been able to do, which was actually surrender. And so I finally just surrendered to the Lord. And I said, okay, not my way, but yours. Like, if you want me, you can have me. Like, I'm in. Yeah. And immediately I had encounter with the Lord where all of the lies I had believed, and I don't even remember all of them. I just remember it was so huge. All of this just fell off of me. And I heard him say, you can love me and you already do. And that just that was my game changer. So I was 14 years old, right over the border of Mexico and Texas. So, small town. And that's where my life changed. And funny because I was on a mission trip. It was the night before my team was supposed to go over the border and just preach the gospel and love on people. And I get saved on a mission trip. So
of course.
It's interesting because there's a verse that says I don't remember exactly how it says, but to pay attention to where you're at in life when you're called. And so that to me was really impactful that God called me while I was in missions.
That's amazing. Would you say that you had the gift of faith? Or what? Because you were able to just be like, I believe, and I know not everyone just has that. So is that the gift of faith, or would you call that something else?
Well, first of all, I want to say that I am not a scholar by any stretch of the imagination about anything that we're talking about. I'm just here to share my experience and my perspective and what I have learned. But everyone is free to disagree if you want.
Okay, so the gift of faith.
I mean, I know that it says in the word that every man has been, God has put eternity in everyone's heart. And so I think that we all have a measure of faith.
Okay.
And so there's so many ways that you can go with that. So is it a gift of faith? I think it's the beginning of one. Yeah. But I think that faith in itself is a gift. Yeah. So I know that there's probably so many doctoral theses out there about a gift of faith and what it means. But I genuinely consider faith a gift in and of itself. And so for me, it is a gift that I was able to believe and kind of bypass the need for intellectual proof or needing to analyze the truth out of it. Because I think that at some point you have to choose to believe, and that really does relate to life with God, because if we don't learn to step out of the boat, so to speak, and have the faith of a child, which a child is just they can jump out anywhere because they don't know a lot of things. Most of them don't know that gravity exists, so you have so many parents grabbing them and everything. And so, but in the spirit, it's gravity doesn't exist. You could just jump out in God, and wherever you land, you're going to find yourself in him if you're in faith. And so I think faith is really seeing God. That's how maybe I would define it. Although I haven't tried to define it ever, but
if you would,
if I would,
that would be
and
it.
One thing I will say is if you've known me for 5 minutes altogether, then you'll know that I've talked about my favorite book outside of the Bible, or in addition to the Bible, is Fire Within, which I have with me with the beautiful non-cover because it's already fallen off because of how much I have carried this around with me. But it does talk about faith and how faith is actually the part of us that is more like God than anything. And so it's more like him than unlike him. And there's a lot of parts of us that are just kind of dim reflections of who he is. But that is the most like him. And so that's really kind of, impacted the way that I see things too, because once I was starting to realize, I can just believe God. It was like all bets are off, and like, okay, it actually got exciting. Like I remember one of the first times that the Lord called me to Hungary, and it was actually the time where I was going to move there, and I didn't know if I should like go to Hungary and like get everything sorted out, a job or money, and all of these things like visa stuff. And I remember being like, God, do I like go and get stuff ready, or do I just like go? And I just didn't know, but I knew that I had a window of opportunity to go. And I knew that the timing was within like a couple of months. And the Lord spoke to me and he said, just go and take your bunny with you. Actually, he said that. And I just remember being like, wow, okay. It's like I knew that I heard him and I could just believe. And so it was exciting to be like, okay, I'm just going to go. I don't know how it's going to turn out. Like he said, call this person and call this person. Okay. And it turns out that the first one was a friend who had a bed for me to stay in for 2 months. And I was like, okay, God can do anything in 2 months. You know, that's good. That's a good seed, you know? And then it was another one for a potential job situation, which fell through like at the last minute, but the Lord totally turned things around. So anyways, all that to say that when faced with maybe a lack of answers intellectually, faith is able to see God in it and step out anyways. And it gives you courage to surrender. That's good. You know, and I feel like faith and surrender kind of are like two legs, you know, like faith and then surrender, and then faith and then surrender. And it's like you really can go somewhere with the Lord with that kind of a heart posture. Yeah.
So, okay, there might be people listening who are like, okay, how did she hear from the Lord? You know? So tell me about hearing from the Lord and knowing that you're hearing from the Lord.
Yeah. That's a $1 million question.
Obviously, yes.
And yeah, I think that there's so many ways, but I remember after I came back from that mission trip where I got saved, someone had prophesied to me. It was the first prophetic word I ever received, actually. And this pastor guy who was there said, he basically called me out as an intercessor. And I'd never heard of that before, but I was like, ooh, that's so cool. And I came back and I was like, Grandpa, what's an intercessor? And I just remember asking my grandpa about it. And I said, well, how do you know that you've heard from God? And he gave me a very scholared answer. He said, you just know. And I was like, well, that doesn't help me at all. Thanks. I literally was like, I thought he was joking. I actually did. Okay. I think in the moment I was like that was like a joke answer because that's like trying to define a word and using the word in the definition. It just was like, I don't understand that. But what I came to realize is that it was absolutely true. That I remember hearing God in certain times and I was like, wow, you couldn't convince me that it wasn't God. Yeah. Like you have a point where you this is how I would say it too, is that when God speaks, it's not just a word, it's a substance. And when that substance lands, it actually is a grace to believe it and to step out with it. Whether it's just agreeing with it or whether that means taking a leap of faith with something, signing a contract, opening a door, choosing whatever it is. It's like when you know that you've heard from God, then you also have like a desire and a grace that comes with it. And it's actually an impartation of who he is. Because when he speaks, it's not just a word, it's an action, it's a substance. it's the knowledge of him, because when he speaks, he's speaking something from his own heart for you. And so it comes with, what comes with that is like, oh, I believe it. Like it allows, and this is where I think it comes into prayer too, because this is where we're like going, opening up a whole door here, is when God speaks, it is a substance of him. And in Revelation, it says that the testimony of Jesus is the spirit of prophecy. So basically, he's testifying about something that he's seen and heard for you and sharing it with you. And so you have the grace to agree with it and believe it. And the way that this relates to prayer in my mind and with what I've understood is that the more you're able to surrender and say, not my will, but yours be done, the more you prepare yourself to receive the knowledge of his will. And so when you prepare yourself to receive it, now you can receive it, you know, because the Lord has seen, like, you've created an altar of a believing heart. And that's one of the key foundations, I believe, of prayer, is that if you can learn to yield, you can learn to pray. Like, if you can lean into the Lord, if your heart and your will and your desire is to know the Lord or to be obedient, like one of my favorite quotes from Teresa of Avila, which is in said book. One of my favorite quotes is when she's talking about prayer and the love of God being like a fire in his presence. She says that there's nothing that you can do to produce even a spark of that fire, but you can only prepare yourself for it. And I feel like, especially in the Western world that I know of, that we really see prayer in terms of performance. And what I've grown up learning is like that prayer is just talking to God. And so like there's a lot of like prayer is more about technique. It's more about a list. It's more about the words that you say. It's more about a routine that you have. But generally, it's not as much about what it really is, which is connection.
So you're saying that people often have a performative view of prayer?
It seems so, yeah.
Okay. That's what you see more often. And then what you're arguing is that it's connection. And so unpack that for us, because this is what impacted me greatly when I heard you talk about prayer. And I was like, it was something, the way that you communicated it, something that I knew people wanted to say, but I had never heard it in that package. And the way that you presented it to this group that I was part of, it was like kind of demystifying and taking the legalistic view of prayer off. So please walk us through that.
I almost feel like I need to just pull that out of the archives and just press play. And I think prayer is really an invitation for everybody. I want to say that right off the bat, because there's nobody who's not called to connection with Jesus. And so I will say that when I was doing my discipleship training school with YWAM, at the very tail end of that, I did it in the base in Budapest, Hungary. And at the very tail end of that, I stayed in Budapest for another like week and a half. And that's where the Lord really launched me into the season of prayer, learning what it is and what it's not. And it came from, believe it or not, being loved. It came from experiencing that God loves me in a very personal way. And I remember at first feeling kind of squirmy about it, like, I don't know if I should receive it. Like, I don't know. I just had a lot of questions, but I felt like the Lord filtered through all the questions and he said, just receive it.
Now, was this like a moment that someone was hosting, or was it just personal one-on-one time with God where you felt like he wanted you to receive his love? What was that like? Because you know, when people tell these stories, they're like, wait, well, someone listening might want this.
Yeah.
And so explain that and how they could ask for the same.
Yes. And that's a great question. For me, it was multiple moments in that like week and a half time period. and was really heightened during like the middle of it. But I will backtrack for a second and just share one of my experiences too, is that I remember obviously too growing up in the church, like I know Jesus loves me, but I couldn't feel it. Okay. And I remember asking the Lord, like, just saying that, like, I know that you love me, but I don't feel it, but I would really love to know what it feels like.
Yeah.
And it wasn't even like some, you know, like major prayer session I had. I wasn't like praying and fasting for 20 days or whatever it is. It's, but it was a sincere prayer.
Request. It was a request to someone that you were in relationship to.
Yes. And actually this brings me to another point, that sincerity is huge when it comes to prayer, because if the more that you can dive into the sincerity of your heart, good or bad, or whatever it looks like, whatever it really is, like what's the raw question, what's the raw emotion, like what's the like raw desire that you have from the Lord, or whatever, because I've had, you know, other things I've asked of the Lord, but I just feel like every time that I've been like, okay, the most raw way for me to say this and like really not be afraid, like of being raw and like saying this is what I truly want, or this is like a true desire, like the more comfortable you can get
That's so good.
with getting there, I feel like it just accelerates the process.
That's so key. That's, I think, powerful, and it's freeing.
It is freeing because all you have to do is be sincere.
Right.
You know,
and if you can't be sincere to yourself and more importantly to the Lord, then who can you be sincere to?
Yeah. I mean, it's hard to have connection when you can't have sincerity, right?
For sure.
And so I just remember that the sincerity, I just remember being like, God, I really just wish that I could feel it. And I went to coffee with a friend, and we're just like sitting there, you know, shooting the breeze and everything. And then all of a sudden they look at me like mid-sentence, okay? And they go, God loves you. And I wept. Like it was like immediate tears, like because I felt it. And that was, it's so ironic. It still makes me laugh because I'm like, that's the most general way of saying it ever. Like God, it wasn't even like Jesus loves you, God loves you. And it broke me. And I love that the Lord used such a random moment with the most vague general way of saying it to show that he doesn't need much to like actually make it happen, you know? And I remember feeling it like, wow, I really feel it. It's almost as if I took it personally, but the Lord like grabbed my hand. He was like my training wheels. It's like he took it personally for me, and then like I felt the effects of it. And I really feel like one of the biggest keys I've learned, going back to your question of and like what I shared that night at the women's event and everything, is all of this has culminated into what I've learned about prayer, and that is that prayer is all about rest, and rest is all about receiving love. And anything that causes restlessness within you, like you can find some sort of an accusation against love.
No, but can you break that down?
Yes, I would love to. I'm like, there's so much in that. And so, yes, I learned, the Lord launched me on this journey of prayer by loving me. And I remember different moments in my life where I have felt the love of God. And what it does is it turns your attention to him. And when your attention on the inside is turned to him, that is prayer. It didn't even need words. It didn't even need whatever. I mean, like, and I'll say this now too, is that you can say a prayer, you can say many prayers, but you can also have a lifestyle of prayer.
Yeah.
And what the Lord was showing me was like this journey of a lifestyle of prayer. It wasn't just, I'm going to say a prayer, I'm going to go through a list and everything. It's he wanted relationship, you know, and I feel like he was responding to the desire that he put in every one of us to be loved, you know, and to love. And every one of us has that. It's like the two things that every person in the world has in common is the desire to love and desire to be loved.
It's simple. Yeah.
It's very simple.
Yeah.
And I think that when we receive love, and the word says this, like we love because he first loved us, right? And so when we get really good at receiving the love, it changes you.
Yeah.
It's a fire that transforms. Like fire will always change the makeup of whatever is on fire, you know?
Yeah.
And I'm not very scientific, so.
But
But I think it's like
changes.
Yes, the substance changes, and it's no different with the fire of God's presence or the fire of God's love on the human heart. Like, and when it begins to change you, like you can really get addicted to that. Like in the best sense, like I really want to know God, and suddenly your appetite for other things, it disappears because you're like, this is what I want. And
so what you're talking about is true transformation.
True transformation. That will always be the fruit of prayer. That will always be the fruit of prayer. I don't believe that real prayer has zero fruit.
Okay, so I want you to break it down. Like, let's go into prayer and how unlegalistic your view of prayer is. Like receiving, and maybe it's receiving and rest that we need to like circle around for a minute.
Probably rest,
okay.
Yeah. And I think, so what I've learned and what my experience has been is that rest is not necessarily the absence of outward activity.
Mm-hmm.
It's the presence of love that stills you within.
Mm.
And I know that can sound a little bit poetic, but that's the way that it made sense to me.
Say it again.
That it's not prayer, or rest is not necessarily the absence of outward activity, because normally we think rest like, oh, I just have to sit there and do nothing and think about nothing and barely breathe, you know. But that's not the rest that I'm talking about. And the rest that I'm talking about is when your soul comes to rest. And when I say your soul, like your mind, your will, your emotions, like there's a part of you that comes to rest on the inside. And actually, I'll say this too, that the waters can often represent the soul, also in your dream life. That's for free. But it's kind of like when Jesus stilled the storm with the disciples on the boat and everything. That can be a representation, like if the boat was your own heart and the waters were like emotion, it's like he can come in and just say, peace, be still. And that is prayer too. And it's when you receive his word that says, peace, be still. That's prayer. And then all of that comes to rest, meaning that, well, let me say it like this. So the journey of prayer is a journey of becoming one with God. And that journey has everything to do with the will. And the more that you can say, not my will, but yours be done, the more you're like in that journey with the Lord. And because at the garden, you know, they said, not your will, but mine be done, you know? But Jesus, as a representation of all of us, said, not my will, but yours be done to the Father. And that's how he was in perfect alignment and perfect unity with the Father's, because he always was in step with his will. And so another thing that Fire Within, it shares is that it's a oneness of likeness and a likeness of will. And so that kind of demystifies it a little bit, because it's not union with God. Sounds like it can sound really lofty and like just for the... And
weird. For some people might find that to be weird if they're not familiar with the concept of all of that.
100%. And yeah, you could take that so many different ways. But I would just recommend thinking of it in terms of, I want the same thing that he wants. And when we do want the same thing that he wants, like we're always going to be where he is.
Yeah.
And I think that anywhere where you don't want, really God's will in your life, which that's not, I don't want to sound legalistic in that way either, but like wherever you have like a self-will from, like maybe you're trying to fill a void of rejection or abandonment, or maybe you're trying to, the need to look good because of pride and different things, all of that causes a restlessness within you. And there's an accusation that says, if you don't do this, you're not good enough. You're not going to be loved. If you don't do this, you know, somebody else is going to get this and you won't be seen and you will be loved and you're going to be overlooked. And like, there's all of these accusations that are so innately like behind the scenes, but they affect so much of what we think and do that if this is where the sincerity gets, if I can just get myself stilled enough to go, okay, this is what I'm sensing, this is what I'm feeling, and then put it on the table before the Lord and just say, I surrender, I'm yielding to you in this. and then allow the Lord to just speak to you. And I would say like 75%, I know I'm a math person, but like I'm rounding, 75% of my inner healing and deliverance came from the Lord just saying, this is this is that, this was that. And just a spirit of understanding coming and giving me understanding about things that have happened in my life, why I behaved certain ways, why I wanted certain things, how I responded to certain things, and like how other people responded. It was just an understanding that came. But I will say that I did make space for the understanding to come.
Yeah.
And I did really desire to say like, okay, I'm putting this on the table. I'm willing to change, like I don't need to be right. I don't need to like look good in front of the Lord. Like, and I wasn't trying to do anything. I really wanted to understand, but I really wanted to know the Lord in it. And I think if you have any sort of inclination to want to know God or to want to do his will, and that just look at that as that's him inside of you already. You're already on the path.
Yeah.
And like, anything that you want that is desiring of the Lord, because the only thing that you can do entirely by yourself is to say no to God. Anything else requires him. And so if you see anything in your heart that is longing for the Lord, that's already him. And I think that's a great seed.
Okay, so I'm thinking about the person who might be listening, who's like, how do I even know if I'm longing for the Lord?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess it's the same longing as we feel for anything else. It's just the attention is on him. And
it could look like thinking about him.
It could look like thinking about him.
I'm just trying to think of this simplicity of what longing, or even a remnant of what longing is.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I think that people, and maybe I'm saying this from my past experience, it's like, wait, am I even hungry for God? Like, and sometimes like I've had to ask, make me hungry.
Yeah. Because I've done the same thing.
There's no appetite. Yep. I don't have an appetite. And 100%. I just want to go stick my head in the sand and watch TikToks.
Yes. Doom scrolling.
Right. Not against those things. I'm not saying that. And sometimes he lets us stick our head in the sand for a moment. And he's loving and kind. But the longing, what does longing look like for you in your life?
That's a really good question. I think that for me, longing started with delight. And it started with the Lord saying, I want you to write down the things that bring you enjoyment. And so I just started making a list.
Yes, this is where the enjoyment list.
Yes,
okay,
the enjoyment list.
That.
And so I just was like, okay, anything where I feel a sense of enjoyment. Okay, so I was like, okay, coffee. Love coffee, drinks, I wasn't aware as much about Red Bull at the time, but anyway, I just made a list of the things that I enjoyed. Coffee was one of them, the cool side of the pillow, a warm hug from a friend or whatever. So just things where I actually I could tell that I felt enjoyment. And then he said, okay, I want you to take those things. And when you experience that enjoyment, I want you to receive it as love from me. And so it took a second because I'm like paradigm shifting a little bit and like training my attention to be put on him when I feel something enjoyable. And this is what I love too about because the purpose of all things in the natural are to point to him anyways. Like when something in the natural, whether it's like hanging out with you, talking with you, drinking, whatever, any good experience, it's like it has done its job when it can point you back to him. It has served its purpose. But I think that it does take an intentionality of turning your attention to him at first until that becomes like more of a default, like it just becomes natural to you. But that's how the Lord really started that process with me. And I learned just to receive him in anything that was enjoyable. So I like, for example, this drink. I love the way this one tastes. We just talked about this a second ago. It has erythritol. Never mind that, the goodness of the Lord and the land of the living, but I enjoy the taste. And so I can take this and go and feel the enjoyment and go, okay, this is the Lord loving me. And I know that can be I know that that can be a paradigm shift, but if I receive it as him loving me, yes, that he gave it to me, but I'm talking more about the sense or the feeling of enjoyment as he's producing that in me.
Yeah.
It's less about the drink, and it's more about, oh, now he's here.
That's good. And
you
then
know,
and that simplifies the whole process tremendously.
Yes.
It's having eyes to see. It's what I'm hearing.
Yes.
Yeah. So eyes to see and know, oh, this is from him.
Yeah. And it takes faith, and going back to faith, it takes faith to do that. Faith is seeing God. It's like, I have faith and I can see, oh, now you're here.
Well, and what I think is really cool about that enjoyment piece, because we're designed for that, okay? And often I know people are like trying to be like, get away from like enjoyment. And it's not, I think Christianity and the history of Christianity, often you can look at like the asceticism and the denial. And yes, that is a big part of following the Lord. There is a denial of self, but there is a paradigm shift that you experience, and it's a divine exchange that it's not something that you can always put words to, although I think you've done a really good job of putting words to that. But it's not like, the more and more that you can receive from him and take it as like, this is enjoyment to me, you come alive in him, in the unique identity that he has given you. And then the thing and your very purpose, I think, from that place gains traction. And then all of a sudden you are actually producing the fruit of the Spirit and producing what you need to do as like, what is your work in the kingdom that you've been called to? And so I think it all snowballs on itself.
100%.
And so if you don't come from that place of like, I know that I'm really loved, in the sense of even, and it's hard. And I want you to speak to the person whom they just came to mind, the person or like persons who have been like, man, I just cannot. The lie that they're believing is that they cannot catch a break. How would you come alongside them in encouragement about that? Like, I can't get out of this pattern. I can't catch a break. I know that's a very specific one, but I'm thinking about that person because sometimes it's really hard to get out of that mentality and into, let me receive the love that is actually here and now.
Going back to like the part about denying yourself is one thing. So yes, take up your cross and deny yourself. And that doesn't feel lovely, you know, but I guarantee you there's a place in the Lord where that actually is.
Okay. So,
but that's a different thing. So
tell me practically, what does that look like? To you,
to me,
this is your opinion, obviously.
Yeah. So, and I'll give an example of something that I just read out of Acts is when the early apostles were persecuted, they actually went away rejoicing that they had suffered the disgrace of the gospel, you know, and that's just a very practical example that how God can be in a time of adversity is, first of all, it can be a mystery how he can be in a time of adversity. But I'm sure many people who are listening have experienced God in a hard time. But but that's just one way of saying that even in time of persecution, when they probably were bleeding, you know, maybe profusely, I don't know, but they were rejoicing that they were counted worthy of suffering disgrace. Which is wild.
It's hard to
and so I just
that.
want to throw that out there as like vision of what is possible. But at the same time, to the person who can't catch a break, I would say start with the smallest thing that you enjoy. So the very smallest thing.
It's really back to that enjoyment, the fundamental piece of enjoyment, which I think is honestly freeing.
I can see where there would be a question of belief versus unbelief, like that can be a hindrance in this place. So when I had been teaching on the book of the Song of Songs, and part of it says, let the north winds come and the south winds come. And there's so much I could say about the Song of Songs. That might be a second episode or something. But like, the thing about the Song of Songs is that the journey of growth and maturity and love requires the north winds of adversity as well as the south winds of blessing. Because we really can grow in the Lord even in times of adversity, but we also grow in times of blessing. It's a different kind of growth, but both are necessary. So I'm not just saying, oh, just enjoy things and, avoid anything, any conflict or,
It's not that view of like, and it's not a naive view.
Right.
There's more depth behind it.
I think that legalism strips the joy out of prayer. I think that's kind of what happens.
Yeah.
And so the more like religious prayer is to you, the less fun you're going to have, like the less joy that's in it. But the caveat is that the joy of the Lord is your strength. And so there is a joy that comes with knowing God. There just is, because when you know him, he has been imparted into you and he is joy. Even in Psalm 45, it talks about Jesus as the Messiah and how he was acquainted with grief. And yet he was anointed with gladness more than all of his companions. And so there's a kind of a dichotomy, but that where you can be even in Isaiah 53, that he was the one who bore our sorrows. Like he knows what it feels like to be in sorrow. He knows grief. He knows adversity, but he also was anointed with gladness more than anyone. And even for the joy set before him, he endured the cross. And so there is a reality in God where even in adversity, you can actually enjoy times of refreshing. Yeah. And I know that part of what caused me to get the fire within in the first place was that I was going through a dark night of the soul. And the Lord told me, guard the fire within. I had no idea what that meant, literally. But I wrote it all caps, double underline. And then I go to this conference and I see this book called Fire Within. I'm like, what are the odds? And so it really, like, the Lord mentored me through this book in that time of the dark night. And that also was during my time of learning what prayer is and what it's not. And, the other thing I want to say is that prayer is really a journey. Like, you can say a prayer, but to have a lifestyle of prayer that is vibrant and sustainable, you have to be at rest. Because the more that you do things out of like, oh, I have like obligation, like, yes, do spiritual disciplines. Like, there's something about like that's a surrendering of your will to the Lord. Like there's a part of you that's like, I just want to surrender. I'm going to get up at 5 a.m. or whatever it is, or I'm going to get up every day. Honestly, I think consistency is more important than when you get up. I think consistency with the Lord really builds an altar to him. And so consistency is important, but that's a discipline, because consistency takes you choosing him in a time where it's uncomfortable, like it's rainy outside, it's cold, I just want to be in my covers, but when you choose as an act of like selfless will to say, I want to prepare myself to receive the Lord. What does that look like for you? Like, it's only you can unpack that, or only you know what that looks like. But when it comes from a place of surrender, like with a believing heart, not just, oh, I have to do this because this is what God wants, or I have to say this thing because that's the right thing. That's what he really wants to hear. That's the main thing that I had to like get out of in like growing up in the church, is that number one, that prayer is just talking to God, because it's not. That's like 5% of what it is. And that you kind of have to say the right things at the right times or whatever. And so it just kind of got to like this technique and religion and like, oh, I got to do it right, or I can't do it right or whatever. So for me, what the Lord was showing me is that prayer is less about like talking to God and more about being aware of him and being attentive. It's like turning your heart within, because anyone at any moment can do that. To the person who can't catch a break, just turn within. You know that he's on the inside of you. You know that he's around you. Even if you can't feel him inside of you or around you, just choose to believe for a second that he's omnipresent. Acknowledge it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Mentally, even if it's just a thought.
Even if you can't feel it, just go there. To the person who can't catch a break, just for a second.
That's good.
Maybe even 2 seconds altogether, go there, And,
okay. Sorry. It's interesting for those who are in the charismatic faith world, whatever, the crazy world that it is, but also beautiful world, and you're just getting into that, and you're around these people who pray, and you're like, man, I want to pray like that. Or like, you kind of feel intimidated.
Yeah.
And
the intercessors that have been there for 60 years.
What would you say about that? And what do you think about learning tools? Is that important? Is it not important? What's your take on that?
I think that tools could always be useful.
Yeah.
But it's more about the heart than it is the tools. And what I've learned about intercession is that being an intercessor is more about being a friend of Jesus. Because in order to be a real intercessor, you have to carry his heart. And it's when what's on his heart carries weight and value the way that it does for him, now you can intercede. Like, I heard at one time that compassion is the gateway to authority, and I love that.
Yeah.
Because it's your heart receiving, like, if you were telling me that you're going through a hard time, like, I'm gonna feel that. I'm gonna be like, oh, like, man, I'm so sorry. Like, and it's like I carry that in my heart, and it's the same thing with intercession. Like, yes, like, I've prayed and fasted, and I have prayed in tongues for 8 hours at a time because the Lord put me on assignment to do that. But more than anything, it was the heart posture. It was more about, you don't get burnt out when you're doing it from a place of, I want to love him.
That's good.
And saying, like, Jesus, I love you. It sounds like, Jesus, I choose you.
Okay.
And
I think that's a well said thing. Go ahead.
And so when you're choosing him, you're loving him.
Yeah.
And the more that you, and this is where he first loved us, like, we love because he first loved us, comes into play, because the enjoyment will turn into delight, and then delight will turn into desire. And this is another thing I want to add about prayer, is that people get distracted a lot. Oh, I want to sit and I can't because my mind goes and everything. It's okay. Let your mind wander, but just turn back within. Madame Jean Guyon, she's a French, I don't know, I would call her a saint. I don't know if she officially is, but
she should be.
She should be. That's one of her main points. That's one of the main points I took away from the book that she wrote, and is just turn back within to the Lord. And as many times as your mind wanders, Teresa of Avila said the same thing. Like, as many times as your mind wanders, just turn back within to him. And so I really believe that the way to overcome distraction in prayer is just delighting in the Lord.
That's good.
And so it's not a negative thing to delight yourself in the Lord. It doesn't take away from, like, having to be real and having to be grounded and going through hard times, because, again, it's the joy of the Lord that gives you strength to go through those hard times, and to do it well. One of the major things about the saints of old who really encountered the Lord and had a deep maturity is that they were able to suffer much and well. And so that has always marked me, because one of their key points was that they weren't repelled by trials. They actually invited them, because the experience of the Lord was so much sweeter in that place. And I know that for some people listening, that could be like, I can't imagine being able to experience the Lord in a hard place. But again, just, it really can start as simple as enjoying him and just taking something, anything, and just enjoying him in it. And, another thing I want to say about it is that the journey of prayer is about union with God. And, but it's more, another way I would say that is that it's about maturing in love. And real spiritual maturity, I would say this, spiritual maturity is more about having authority over your will to choose his. And so the more grounded in love you are, the more you have authority over your own will to choose him. And it takes receiving love to get grounded in love, but again, if you see love as conditional, then you're going to see prayer as productivity. And so because you got to perform, you got to do it right. You cannot do this, don't do this, do that, and if it's all about performance and productivity, then it's not about love. But when you get down to love, where love is unconditional, he just loves you. And there's nothing you can do to change that, which is wild if you think about it. and I know it's cliche, it can be or whatever, but he loves you wholeheartedly, whether you believe it or not, whether you feel it or not. But it's a lot more fun when you start to try to believe it.
I think that's a good point.
Yeah.
And I think that people lose track of that often. It's like, what if I just believed it?
Yeah.
And even if you
What could
don't,
happen?
even if you don't, I believe that he will use that as a seed unto belief.
Yeah.
There's so many things, so many other topics I would cover. And I think I have one final question. We'll probably have to keep it a little brief. But what would you tell to the person who is a feeler? And I know that I feel like feelers and intercessors, they kind of go hand in hand. But like, how do you handle that? Because it's hard. I see some people struggle with that marriage of those two things within. And so, or just like being a feeler in 100%. How do you deal with that as a believer?
Yeah. Well, as a believer and a feeler myself, like my empathy levels can be off the chart sometimes. I would say the more that you can see Jesus present with you in the feeling, the better it will be.
Well said. I love that. And I know we could have unpacked that for a lot longer, but I think that's a really good like rule of thumb, you know?
Yes. And I want to add to that too, that he feels it too. So you're not feeling it alone.
You're not alone. I think that's key. And because I think that sometimes a feeler might think
they're feeling it all on their own. They're carrying the weight of the world on their own shoulders. But that's what being an intercessor is to say, okay, I feel this, but I'm going to give it back to you, Jesus.
Yeah. That's so beautiful.
And that's all that it is.
Yeah.
You don't have to keep feeling it. You don't have to keep feeling the weight. But if you do, continue to give it back to him until you feel a release.
So good. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
So,
what a joy.
Listeners, thank you for partaking with us in this rich conversation. And if you have, I know we didn't even talk about your bookkeeping business. If you have bookkeeping needs, we will include a way to get in touch with Heather in the description below. But please share with us, what did you learn today? What did you learn about prayer? We do read your comments. We love them. And thank you so much for joining us today. God bless.
Amen.